Okay, well, super excited tonight to bring back Jonathan Hertzberg of Fun City Editions. Jonathan, thank you so much for coming back.
Thanks so much for having me back, Chris.
Yeah, of
Lots
course.
happened since last time we spoke.
Right? Congratulations. We're going to talk about this here in a minute, but I'm staring at, I know you don't do traditional spine numbers as it stands, but I'm staring at catalog number 15
Mhm.
since we last spoke in just over a year and a half. So congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I don't
Including a box
remember.
set.
Yeah, I don't remember where we were at in the process when I spoke to you because you that was yeah, I guess that was like early 2021. So
Yeah, exactly. No, that's great. I think I'm pretty sure I'll have to go back and double check this, but I know Alphabet City had come out, and I believe I Start Counting had already come out, and you just released Jeremy or something like that. I
okay.
think it was right around that time.
Oh yeah, all right. Yeah. Wow.
And so, yeah, a lot's happened since then. So we're going to dive deep into the journey here in a minute, but just high level, how's it been? You still happy to be doing this?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, man. It's still a dream. It's still completely satisfying to be able to sort of help give these films a second or third life, and
Yeah.
especially we've had a lot of since you and I spoke, we've had quite a few titles come out where we had filmmaker involvement, and it's just been
Yeah.
so cool to get to see them see their babies get new life
Yeah.
after they really didn't see that coming in a lot of cases.
Is there one title that stands out to you where that's true? Like, just you can talk a little bit. That's a cool concept you brought up. Is there one where you're thinking
Oh
about?
yeah, for sure. I would say Natural Enemies is one of
Okay.
those. Heartbreakers is one of those. Those
Okay.
are two of our recent releases where
Yeah.
the filmmakers were around, and the filmmakers gave us a lot of their time and a lot of their stories and memories, and both of those films had been out of circulation for a long time. So and in both cases maybe hadn't really had a fair shake, or had sort of been forgotten, or like in the case of Natural Enemies really barely came out, and Heartbreakers had come out, but it really had been out of circulation. Both had been out of circulation for decades. So neither filmmaker, Bobby Roth, the director of Heartbreakers, nor Jeff Canoe, the director of Natural Enemies, like really thought that these movies would see the light of day again, or have like the idea of having like new reviews for these movies,
Yeah.
was really pretty mind-blowing for both of those guys. So it's been fun to share, like when good reviews come in and stuff like that, just to
Oh, that's
share
great.
it with them. Yeah.
I have to imagine Radio One was one of those as well. Were they involved much in that project?
Yeah, we were involved with Chris Pettit, and we did do a new on-camera interview with
Yeah.
Chris. I mean, Chris, and yeah, we weren't that one. It's a little bit different because the BFI had done the restoration of the film, and that film had been out. It hadn't been quite as buried as the two other
Okay.
films I mentioned.
That's
So
true.
yeah, so I think which is not to say that Chris Pettit also wasn't really excited that his movie was coming out
Uh-huh.
here and in England, and really nice new additions and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just that with these two films, there's sort of more. We were more involved with them from soup to nuts.
Yeah. That makes total sense. Um, yeah, that Radio One was just I was that it's a fair point because that's one that I was so excited when I heard it announced. So I kind of already had a history with it. So that makes total sense that you say that.
Yeah, yeah.
With
No, I mean
as a
we're still super excited to be able to put it out here, and
yeah,
we had it in the New York Film Festival last year, and then it went up on the Criterion Channel. So
yeah,
we did really actually get to really get that one out there in a lot of different places here in the US, which was really exciting because it's a British film, and it's much less, it was much less known here than it is over there.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, okay, so I think I have a ranking up. I meant to pull this up ahead of time. I'm going to pull it up right now. I have
Okay.
a ranking on Letterboxd that I have for anybody who's following me, fun city titles.
Uh-oh.
Um, and I just, the thing that's jumped out to me as I go through them is, how any ranking list is always inherently kind of um, misleading a little bit, because if it's like, if you like all of them, there's really no point in having something at number 13, because it's like, well, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that there's a bunch of some ones ahead of it.
Mhm.
Right now, though, I have Born to Win at number one.
Oh wow. Okay.
I thought that film was so cool.
Oh, well,
Uh,
I'm really glad to hear it. It definitely, well, tell me why you thought it was, what you really enjoyed about it, what you thought was so cool about it.
it's okay. So first of all, the performance from George Siegel, just like I knew he was a pretty good actor, and he was pretty good in is it Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? Is that right? Where he is,
Yes, yes, yes.
yeah, he's pretty good in that, or maybe great in that. I don't know, but I just hadn't really thought of him in like being able to handle a role like this. He's so much energy. He just like explodes on the screen, and it's just like when he's I don't know, I just like I wanted to keep watching him, and he handles the thing well, where there's like tragedy in his life and tragedy in his personality. And I
Mhm.
think he does this thing that's really hard to do, of being energetic and positive, but the tragedy is like the main thing that comes through.
Mhm, mhm.
And it's just not many people can pull that off.
Right, right. That idea of like somebody whose life is like falling apart, but he's projecting this facade of like, yeah, man, everything's cool. I'm born to
Yeah,
win. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Exactly. And I think it's just nice sometimes, like movies like this, I feel maybe they don't land well as well in their initial release, or get remembered as well, because it's almost like it feels like a genre that you're expecting, but slightly off. um, but
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know, I loved it.
Oh, really? Well, I'm glad to hear it. I'm hoping then that when this goes up, that will just maybe you're trumpeting it and championing it will help bump the sales up a little bit, because it hasn't been our best seller, unfortunately. But
Really?
yeah, but I mean, subject matter it may be tough, and
Maybe
also,
just name recognition. I don't know.
well, so this film has been in the public domain, or treated as if it's public domain, for like decades and decades. So there's a lot of really crappy,
Mm,
like basically bootleggy versions out there, streaming and otherwise.
yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that a lot of people maybe have viewed the film that way, and that doesn't exactly present a film as good as it could when it looks, kind of janky, and anyway, I don't know if that's impacted the sales or not, but yeah, it's still we're still it's still we're we're still plugging it, it's still plugging away. I just mean that it wasn't like Married to the Mob,
Already
which is
sold
such a
out, right?
good seller for us. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So they can't all
Um,
be that, but yeah, we love Born to Win. So I'm really glad that that one spoke to you.
Oh
Uh,
God, yeah, it's awesome. I'll do my part. I also separately on Reddit, just because I write about movies anyway, so I thought why not post some stuff on Reddit. I also have all the way up through either Born to Win or Coca-Cola Kid up as like I call it like exposure to. So it's up on Reddit, and then people
oh,
have
cool.
commented on there on some of these. I just think it's fun to do it, because like, a lot of times people will be like, "Oh, I was thinking about getting this. Tell me about it," or whatever. I don't want to go through all of them, but I do want to call it number two, because probably the most surprise title to me, not that I know you personally, but I feel like as you put movies out, I feel like I'm starting to get a feeling of like who Jonathan is, or your taste a little bit.
Okay.
And like the
Cool.
thing that surprised me the most that I love that you put out was Morven Caller.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
So I'm curious if you could talk about like how was that? Did you get to like work with the filmmakers at all, or like how was that to put out?
Well, that was a dream to put out, because that was a film that I like really loved when it came out, when I saw it. I mean, sort of shockingly to me, 20 years ago. It just Seems
Yeah,
like,
right.
where did that time go? And that was a film that just um really spoke to me, and it really, it was like one of those pivotal films. And then, like years later, when it was something that was a possibility for us to put out, it was really, like I say, it was really a dream, because it was just sort of shocking that nobody else had done it. And it really hadn't been represented well in the HD era. It had a very early era DVD, so the quality out there really wasn't great. And then, unless you were lucky to see a print of, 35 print playing somewhere,
Yeah.
you really couldn't see this movie in good quality. So it was really, really a treat and it is one of the best, you know, films, I think, and it's kind of continually ranked as one of the best films of the last couple of decades. And yeah, so unfortunately, we didn't really get to work with the filmmakers on it. We didn't really get to work closely with Lynn Ramsey on it, just like
Okay.
scheduling, things like that. She was
Okay.
working on some other projects and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, but still, like I say, definitely, I feel a crown jewel in our catalog, Morgan
And
Collar.
hopefully that's selling well.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is
Okay,
selling
good.
well. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely like, for a lot of it's interesting, because even though that film has a big audience, I think a lot of the people that were our initial buying audience didn't necessarily know the film. So I think it kind of, it was one of those cases where a film like Morgan Collar, which already has a big following and a
Yeah.
notoriety, brought some new audience to our line, and
Okay, good.
then we brought some new audience to the film from, people that were already buying Fun City product up until then.
Well, this is something that maybe is a good transition point, because you mentioned one of the best films of the early 2000s, and this is kind of something. There's a few films that OCN, excuse me, has put out now, that
Mhm.
I use as sort of examples of why I love what they're doing so much and what Justin's kind of putting together there so much. And one of them is Morven Collar, because if you look at Lim Ramsey's filmography, it's like Criterion has one or two of her releases, and then
Right.
Fun City has one, and I love that. Like, there's another label that just put out Rebels of the Neon God. It's another one that could easily be a quote unquote Criterion film.
Sure, sure. Yeah, that's
And
Big World. Big World put out.
Big World, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And like that was so happy to see that getting a release. And like I just love that, I guess what Justin and all of y'all are kind of building over there, which is like, hey,
Mhm.
like there's a lot of good movies to put out.
Oh yeah, no, it's a never. Yeah, um, it's really, it's daunting, actually, because there's obviously so much. There's so much out there. There's so much untapped, and and then, of course, our label, our mission statement is a little bit wide ranging. So it means that we can fit a lot of different things under the tent. But yeah, but it's also, but it's exciting, because I feel like I don't we're not in a we're not kind of cornered too much into one area. So we're not, if something is, if we're not able to work out a deal for one thing, we can pivot somewhere else. And there's always plenty of other exciting potential projects, acquisitions to work on.
Well, I know your background is in, I hope I say the word right. It's repertory cinema, right? That's what people talk about, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I know it's your background. So do you feel like that's helped though in kind of what you're talking about? Because whether it's new festivals or just, festival movies that happen to be 30, 40 years old, like it seems to be a lot that's where you're pulling from, right?
Well, yeah, we're definitely, our concentration is definitely on the repertory, or catalog side.
Yeah,
Obviously, we're not really putting out contemporary stuff, but then, people thought, oh, you guys are doing 70s and 80s stuff, and then we did Morver and Collar, and that's from 2002, so that kind
right.
of confused or muddied the waters a little. So I guess what I said after that was essentially, if something is like around 20 years old, it's probably fair game for
It
us. Yeah.
reminds me of, I'm not trying to compare like style wise, but like the, mission wise. If you grew up listening to classic radio and as you become an adult, the music that you listened to as a teenager all of a sudden is on classic radio. You're like, shit.
Oh yeah, right. The like the yeah, the goalposts on that change. You mean like on like
Yeah,
classic rock radio and stuff like
exactly.
that?
Yeah. All of a sudden
Yeah.
you're like, how's that classic rock? I used to listen to that. Anyways, but okay, cool. Well, um, so you one of the things that we talked about last time you were on that I think is cool, in my opinion, you've still been able to maintain
Hmm.
is, and I don't remember exactly how we phrased it, but essentially the city or the environment of the movie becomes a character in a lot of what you put out.
Oh
So it
yeah,
was
yeah.
like,
I remember that you said that. Yeah, that
okay,
was yeah. You had that was a different angle that a lot of I don't think that has really come up elsewhere. So
well, I still think you're doing it. I don't know. There must be something unconscious or subconscious because, like, if you look at Radio One, that's an obvious example. Morven
mhm.
Caller, when she travels, it becomes such an important piece of that movie, and the way
Yeah.
that the rooms that she's in, and the desert where they're in for a while, or
Hmm.
Bilitis, obviously, Born to Win is a city movie out in the outback of Australia for Coca-Cola Kid. I don't know. I just feel like there's something in there that still is that. But you're saying it's not intentional. It's just kind of
No,
maybe
I
aligned
mean,
with your.
I would say that no, I'm not discounting it. I'm not saying it's like not a valid point of discussion or anything. No, I love finding connective tissue like that with these, with a group of otherwise kind of disparate
Yeah.
films.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I definitely, I definitely love when a film, and if I said this before on the previous episode, I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but I do love when a film really kind of envelops you in its world. Like when,
Yeah.
when you really feel like the filmmaker and just the everyone involved in the film has really created like a world that actually kind of really feels like it exists, like that the movie that the world within the film exists before the film and after the film.
Right.
And I do feel like, I don't know if that's exactly what you're saying, but that's certainly something that I respond to probably subconsciously, in films that I really that really speak to me. Yeah.
Well, good filmmakers can pull it out if it's there, right? They use that well. I mean, that was one of the things that I remember so well about I Start Counting
Yeah.
was you wouldn't think about it intuitively, but the kind of the countryside of the UK becomes sort of adds to the creepiness somehow. Like they're able to pull it out,
Right. Right. Well, they use in that film, they really use the environment like that was actually there happening at the time with the
Yeah.
buildings simultaneously being demolished and new buildings being
Yeah, yeah,
constructed. It really, that one really feels like, they are really capturing a very specific moment in time because that wasn't created for the film. That was just like that was real deconstruction and construction that was happening there. And they just used it for the purposes of the story. So so it lent it a documentary kind of feel. And I mean, people say that's really like all films kind of end up existing as like secondary or like accidental documentaries, which is, I think,
yeah,
like a fascinating thing. And that's something like, since we're dealing with older films and we have films like Alphabet City, which, take place in this indelibly New York
uh-huh,
setting, although very heightened New York setting, but also indelibly like from the past and
uh-huh,
absolutely like a world that doesn't exist, a version of this place that doesn't exist anymore.
right.
And I mean, that's just like going to happen with probably like every one of our films. Like, I don't know, I've never been to Australia. I don't really know the places where Coca-Cola Kid was filmed, but I
Uh-huh,
bet someone who's familiar with some of the places that you see in Coca-Cola Kid would feel the same way. Like, wow, this movie, on top of everything else it's doing, it's preserving this version of this place that is far different now than it was
yeah.
when they made the movie.
Um, well, That's awesome. I hope it continues. It's one of my favorite things about when every movie that I put on of yours is just kind of trying to see that connection because so far it's 13 for 13. I have yet to see
Well,
Natural Enemies or Married to the Mob, although I have them. So
what do you think about, like, tell me, like, Heartbreakers, which is I guess the most recent one you've seen.
yeah,
How do
yeah,
you
yeah,
feel
yeah.
about that?
Heartbreakers was cool. It was let's see where I have it on my list. So I had it at right after Smile, which would be 6.
Okay, so like, but
Um,
like, I mean, in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of like that world, that sort of world building quality of it, I guess, for lack of a better
no, totally. Sorry.
term.
I was just thinking of, so I like the movie. And also, as far as you're saying, it was that one is in LA, right? Not New York. It was LA.
That's totally an
And
LA movie. Yeah,
exactly,
yeah,
yeah. Like I felt like I felt like I had a better sense of what it was like to do cocaine in LA, like at that time period. I don't know if they actually did get cocaine. I can't remember, but that world that they're in, it just felt
yeah.
like, they're partying, they're kind of on the edge.
Yeah,
Uh,
there isn't a, they don't partake on screen anyway. There's
yeah.
no, but
Yeah, that party kind of bachelor like lifestyle, or yeah, like I don't even know how to describe it. They're in relationships, but just that kind of like that little party lifestyle of LA at that time period, I think was definitely a character of itself. I mean, the stuff they get into with the sex worker is crazy. It's out there. It's really funny, like, and it's kind of sweet in its own way too. So
yeah, no, I mean, they're all all the characters have very, like that, the character you're talking about, played by Carol Wayne. That's just like sort of like this very kind of like casually, like, very offhandedly kind of remarked on part of her life. But
mm,
it was like we saw her as a model
yeah,
for Peter Coyote's artist, and then yeah, when they're at her house for dinner, she's also just like also taking phone sex calls, and it's just very matter of fact,
yeah,
which
totally.
but totally seemed very, it absolutely all seemed to me like very like realistic. Like these are probably all these things are, I imagine, I think a lot of this stuff is taken from real life, from things that the writer director Bobby Roth, or things or people that he encountered in real life.
Yeah, and so
It has that
anyways,
very personal. That is probably one of the films that feels the most personal of everything we.
yeah, I like the waste. Yeah, I agree with that. I like that. You have now released 2 movies with Jeff Bridges, is that right?
Yes,
Because
yes, Cutter's Way and Rancho Deluxe.
Cutter's
Yes,
Way is coming out, right? And
yes.
then yeah.
So
So
we have two films with Jeff Bridges, and
and they're also the same director, right?
we have two films by Yvonne Passer. Born to Win is Yvonne Passer,
Oh, that's
and
what it was.
yeah, and Cutter's Way is Yvonne Passer. So with Cutter's Way, we there are some other repeats, some other repeated people in our movies, but yeah, that's the Cutter's Way is the first film that where we're repeating a director, and yeah, and also a big star in Jeff Bridges, which is pretty cool.
That's fun. Do you have? One of the things I've learned through doing this a lot. I always find interesting is I guess I just hadn't really thought about it before I started talking to folks like you, was that sometimes people will have like a production list of like a year out or like 2 years out of titles that you have licensed, but you're
Oh
just kind
yeah,
of like
yeah,
going through
yeah.
the motions on. So
Right.
not with any detail, but just at a high level, like do you have a few that are kind of, do you have like 6 months out or a year, or just do you have like how's the licensing looking for like the future, like of movies you make?
Excuse me. Probably about it. We're probably a year to maybe 12 to 15 months out, I think.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
you're
yeah.
you're going through the motion of like getting the booklets and getting the interviews and doing the special features. Like this is just kind of how your days are now.
Yeah, yes. That's definitely theoretically how they should be.
Okay.
But yeah, a lot of times it does. A lot of times these things I find end up being happening closer to that release date. I would like to be more like have things really happening more in advance, and more simultaneously. That's a goal for sure. But in terms of like things that are coming in various stages. We're probably about 12 to 15 months out.
By the way, I think that's universal. The company I work for is going to report $18 billion of revenue this year. And I was up last night till 11:30 getting something ready to submit at midnight. Like, I think it's just kind of how it goes. Like, even as big as you get, like, human behavior is kind of human behavior. Like,
I suppose. I don't know if everyone's a natural procrastinator, but I
o-
certainly am.
only the successful people.
All right, I'll try to remember that.
Just kidding. I don't know. I'm just justifying it. Um, so kind of tying into this idea of what your days are like. So when you started out, you start putting out the discs. I know you have, if I remember your background correctly, you have a lot of ties to theaters, like to be able to do like theatrical, if you wanted to distribute theatrically as well, you have a lot of those connections. Have you,
Certainly, yeah.
yeah, are you gonna
If the
start doing
rights
more
are
of that?
available, if the cinematic or public performance rights are available, for certainly I have, a lot of practical work experience
Yeah.
booking movies that way. Yeah. Mhm.
So is that something that you might do more of, or is that something that y'all are gonna do more of?
I'm certainly certainly if like I said, if those rights are available, it just so happens that with a lot of the films we've licensed, those rights haven't been available, and we've primarily focused on Blu-ray or on just on home video because
I'm
that's
just
what's been available to us.
That's a good point. I'm just looking at these. I see a lot of MGM here, so I
Yeah.
guess a lot of these films are probably they're not going to release the theatrical rights for a lot of these, probably, right?
Yes, so the studio, a lot of the times the studios, not just MGM, but like the the studios in general are not as they're not typically going to license out the theatrical rights, the cinematic rights, or the digital streaming rights as easily. They're usually only making the home video rights available. So
Yeah,
then there's other films that we have like Radio On where we were able to license all of the rights. So all the major rights that theatrical, home video, TV, streaming, everything, which is nice when we can do that because
yeah,
obviously it gives us more ways to make our money back.
right.
So it's definitely better for business to be
Yeah.
able to do that.
Speaking of better for business, how was the box set for y'all? Was that fun project? Do you think you'd ever do another box set?
Yeah, I would like to do another one for sure. Yeah, that was a fun one to do because that was just a crazy that catalog, the company that those titles came from, they just have a huge, they're just, really varied catalog with just lots of all different types of movies. And I just happened to find that this they had this library basically of films, TV films that were produced by the same producing team. And so we picked and I found these three that I felt sort of had some had some strands that made them, that connected them beyond the fact that they had the same producers. They had like, I felt they all kind of had a little bit of a youth bent to them. Like all of them,
Definitely.
all of the protagonists are young people,
Hmm.
and the issues that they're confronting are the issues of the popular or very topical issues of that day, of the late 70s and early 80s. That those were things that people were really grappling with. All of the subjects in that movie, or in those three movies, were things that were sort of like that ripped from the headlines kind of
Yeah,
kind of uh subject matter. And so we, the name Primetime Panic is kind of alluding to this. These movies were made for prime time. They were primetime movies of the week, so they were playing at like 8-9 p.m. at night,
yeah,
and they were designed to and these were films that to one degree or another were kind of designed to get people talking, and they're playing also on these were topics that people were had some fear of, or had some, because these were things like, oh, you don't want your kids to get involved or get stuck in this or get stuck in that type of predicament. That's what all these movies were kind of dealing with. So they're sort of playing on what's topical, and also like playing on fears of the day.
I think
That's
is
what
it
we came up with, prime time. We had to come up with something kind of alliterative, so that's what we did.
I
I
like it.
thought
I
it
remember
worked. I
that
thought it worked
it's
well.
no, it's a very catchy title. Is Dreams Don't Die, the Carnival one? Is that right? Or is that Freedom?
Freedom is the one that's in the carnival.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and then Dreams Don't Die was the one with the young graffiti writer in New York.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, of
Uh,
course. Freedom then was the one where my wife and I were talking about it afterwards. Like, nowadays, in theory, in that same situation, you have a cell phone to keep up with your kid, but back then they just kind of like went with this carnival. Like, I can't imagine.
No, and then the funny thing is, it's like all based on real. It's actually the most real, based on real events film of any of those three. It's
Yeah.
the most, actually. I mean, maybe some stuff in the movie is altered a little for TV, but
Mhm.
it's the least heightened. The other ones are a little more sensational, to say the least.
Yeah, sure,
But
sure.
Freedom is actually like the most. Freedom is probably my favorite one of the three, because I felt like it actually had. It felt to me like it had it had similarities to a lot of the character based cinema that was happening in the new Hollywood in the 70s. I felt like that film had
Yeah.
felt like somewhat something of an extension of that. Like it wasn't so focused on the plot mechanics. It didn't have anything. I like that it didn't have anything super sensational like tabloidy in it. And it was more about like the people and that environment. Like I just loved the portrayal of the environment of the carnival. Like it was felt very authentic to me, which I liked.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it's funny because that the cool thing about that primetime panic set was that everyone had a favorite. I would read, read reviews either like on Letterboxd or on social media or even on some of the different Blu-ray sites, and it was like someone would speak really strongly for every one of those movies.
Yeah. My
So which I thought was cool.
this one was my favorite. I'm probably biased. So when I saw Death Rise to Osaka, I liked it and I looked it up and I was like, Jonathan Kaplan,
Yeah.
isn't that the Truck Turner guy?
Yeah.
And then like anyways, I was like, what? No way. And then like his backstory is interesting how he did was it he did one movie, was it Over the Edge? Anyways, he did some movie
Yes, he did
and,
Over the Edge. Yeah.
okay, yeah. And he was like, yeah, I think my career is over. And so like he was kind of just like happy to get work for a while and then
Yeah.
and obviously then he came back in a big way. But
Yeah, no,
um
and that was a lot, and that was Over the Edge was a very formative movie for me, so I was excited to be able to talk to him. I mean, I was like, I'd love to be. I talked to him. We had a great interview, and
yeah,
we still talked about Over the Edge and some of his other stuff because I felt like, I mean, it was relevant because it bordered his work in these TV films. But yeah, really interesting trajectory for him that he had directed Truck Turner, he directed Over the Edge, he directed a few other feature films, and then he directed this string of television films
yeah,
when his employment was a little difficult on getting another feature film job. But he was very positive about it when we talked about it, and talked about how they were invaluable teaching learning experiences for him. Like even though they were TV movies, he said it made him a better filmmaker for later part of his career when he went back to directing Hollywood features. So
yeah,
and yeah, and that was just so much fun to talk to him. And he had so many good memories of Death Ride to Osaka. Like his memory for it, for something he made 40 years before, I was really impressed.
yeah.
And I
It was a
loved, and I also really loved that we got to talk about Jennifer Jason Leigh and his working with her and how important that was for him. She is really one of the great great actors of her generation.
yeah,
And
sure.
even though this is a TV film, um, it still offered her, like challenges, and she got to sing, and it was still a
Mhm.
tough, there's still a tough part. And I think I was glad we were able to put it out in a quality version, because I think that what putting these TV films out, I think one of the messages I was trying to communicate was that, like, yeah, even though Jonathan Kaplan, you know him from things like Over the Edge or The Accused, these films are also an important part of his filmography too, even though they were made for
Yeah.
TV. And even though Jennifer Jason Leigh is, you know, Academy Award nominated actress and Independent Spirit Award winner, and acted in so many wonderful films, feature films, that this film is, if you're like if you're evaluating their whole careers, these are valuable, these are valuable links in the chain, basically, these
Totally.
TV films. So I think it's like, it's a and it's a part of film history, TV history, which is still kind of untapped. And like a lot of these films are still not available, or still
Mhm.
have been restored. So the fact that these were restored and they look, I mean, they look incredible. These films like look better than anyone ever would have seen them, because really they never really played. They would never have really played in theaters for the most part. I mean, some of these films had some possible foreign theatrical play, but I mean, most people here anyway just saw them on TV. So so cool
Well,
to be able to see all the stuff in the background, like for like a Dreams Don't Die, the production design in that, like all the detail, all the graffiti is, I mean, hugely valuable, because it's
yeah.
actually, it's graffiti by real legendary graffiti writers like Dondi. And this is like actually there, it's not graffiti done by like production designers, which is a lot of
Uh-huh.
movies, the graffiti is fake. It's just made by the art department. But the
Mhm.
Dreams Don't Die is notable because Dondi, who's one of the greatest and most like influential graffiti writers of the classic era of
Mhm.
graffiti in New York, he actually does most of the graffiti for the main
It's awesome.
character.
It's
So,
awesome.
and
That was
it looks so much better now. Like you could just see, now you could freeze frame and you could just see stuff in high def, that
right, 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 right.
a lot of stuff that would have been blurry if you saw it on TV back way back when.
Just not to spend too much time on this because it's a different label, but one of my favorite documentaries I saw last year was Martha: A Picture Story. Have you seen that yet? It was from Utopia.
No, I haven't seen it
Um,
yet. I have
oh
the
my
Blu-ray
gosh.
and I still have to watch it. Yeah, so
She just jumps off the screen. Talk about a lead performance. Like she's a force. It's awesome.
well, you've seen Style Wars?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so I mean, she's obviously one of the people that, made the book and the film. So yeah, I mean,
Totally.
it's definitely links up with Dreams Don't Die. I thought that was cool that they came out around the same time,
Yeah.
because obviously Martha had photographed Dondi. She had photographed,
Yeah.
some of the most iconic pictures of hers are of Dondi, when he's writing. So yeah, I thought that was fun to kind of, connect that stuff on social media.
Totally. That's cool. Well, the two I have two kind of big questions left. One is going to sound like I'm putting you on the spot. I don't mean that. I don't mean to do that. The only title that I'm just a little confused at when I watched it, and I would just love to hear from somebody who's passionate about it because I didn't know quite how to take it, was Bilitis.
Oh,
Um,
Bilitis.
okay, sorry, Bilitis.
Yeah.
So I Bilitis. I didn't know how, like, help me understand like that because it's the girls are actually pretty young in that, and I don't know. I just felt uncomfortable watching it a bit. But help me understand, like this. Is it like, yeah? Can you help me get like what is it that I want to see it again with a clear mind? So I'd love to help. Like if you could help me understand, like
Sure. Yeah. Well, I have to
this.
say, I'm, well, I'm not. I have to say that every film, I don't, every film that we put out, and I think most anyone in my position would say the same thing, and it's the truth, is like, just like you rank the movies on Letterboxd, You have a personal ranking. Not every film, I can't say that every film means as much to me or as close to my heart as others. So Bilitis is for me is not one of those films, but at the same time, at the same time, I felt it was something that was available to us, and I felt that it has it has historic significance. It had not all of it good, obviously, particularly with the filmmaker. And I felt that one of the things I feel strongly about, and it's true on all of our releases, is that um, we don't just put the movie out by itself. So I felt like, yeah, this is a difficult movie, obviously, for on multiple levels. So I felt that it was important to have historical contextual extra
Yeah,
features like a historian audio commentary, for instance. So the movie is not just by itself. So like if
sure.
you're having questions like you're having, like, help me understand this. Like I could say, I think it's important. I don't believe that like if I do believe strongly that in the case of like something like Bilitis, where there's where the creator or the artist, the filmmaker is problematic or has some troubling history, as David Hamilton does,
Uh-huh.
that it doesn't, I don't think, I do feel that I feel that we should still be able to or endeavor to separate art from the artist.
Totally.
So, this is a case of that. It's sort of like, it was sort of, I guess, in some ways like a litmus test. And, I just felt like I don't love the movie, to be honest with you. It's not
Okay.
there's things, but there are things that I do think there are things that I do really like about the movie. I love the music. I'm a big, I'm a big soundtrack person. That's another thing um,
Oh
that
yeah.
connects a lot of
Yeah,
our films. I
totally.
really like the Francis Lai music for that film. In fact, I was familiar with the soundtrack before I had seen the movie, and also the photography, the style, the look of the film, um, and the way they achieved that look. And
Kind of that merchant ivory style, like that kind of
yeah,
period
that
piece kind of.
gauzy. It's
Yeah,
that it's this gauzy kind of
yeah,
you know fuzzy kind of look to it,
yeah.
and it looks like a period movie, even though that movie wasn't a period film. But and we had a good interview the camera operator, as I recall, in a French, subtitled in English interview, which is also, in addition to the commentary, I thought was a pretty good feature, just in terms of like talking about how this look was achieved, especially I think like that's something else. Like a lot of the most of the films we've released are things that were shot on film, and now we're releasing them on a digital format. And that's a movie in particular that is like so much in an analog looking film. Like
Right.
the effects that they achieved are all like achieved within the camera. They're all in camera effects in terms
Mm-hmm.
of using um, special kinds of lenses and things that they developed for that film. So I thought that was pretty cool to be able to have that discussion there too, because that's another thing that people talk about a lot with that film. So anyway, I don't know if I've answered your question at all, but yeah,
No,
I mean,
you
like I
did.
said, it's it's like I feel pretty strongly that, like, I keep saying that. I feel like most of our films, all of our films probably have things that in today's climate play differently than they would have when they came out. And Bilitis is no different. Well, a lot of so there's oftentimes we have people will comment on something in one of the films and and sort of be like surprised that it was like, how did this get by, or how did this happen,
Oh yeah.
how did this
Uh,
happen in this movie or that movie. And and the thing is that if you go back and look at contemporary reviews and reactions when those films were first released, they they weren't commented on. It's just, but more social mores change, and obviously in a lot of ways for the better. But I do think that sometimes, again, without the context, without having some surrounding some kind of commentary. I think that sometimes if you just leave the film by itself, then it's maybe not always viewed as totally fairly. I feel like
I mean, you could look at something like Solo and say the same thing, right? If you have no context for that movie, you watch it, you're like, what?
yeah,
So not that
yeah,
I'm comparing the two, but I mean,
right,
there
right,
are other examples of like,
sure,
if you
yeah,
just
that's
take
what.
a movie without the context, you're like, what is happening?
Yeah, it's not, these are, I feel they're almost designed not to just be watched
Yeah.
by itself. It's almost like like, I think that probably the commentary on Bilitis is probably the most important commentary on any of our discs, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Because, yes, because it's a movie that a lot of people are going to have questions about, and they don't shy away from any of it on the commentary either. I think that the historians on that track did a really good job.
Okay. Well, I'll watch the commentary then, and I'll let you know, and I'll
There's
update my.
certainly no, there's certainly don't, there's no obligation to. Obviously,
No,
it's
I
sort
want.
of like if you'd have to actually still like you have to still feel like some desire to do it. It's not like medicine. You don't have.
No, but I defend what you just defended all the time for
Mhm.
movies that I like for different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I would say
So
every one of our films, probably almost every one, if not every one of our films, is a it's a cliche at this point, but it's a they don't make them like that anymore kind of movie. So.
that's the other common thread between all of them. That's funny. Cool. Well, thank you for going down that path. I wanted to send you an email and just ask you, but I thought, why not do it in front of hundreds of listeners? So, so thank you for going down that path with me. Okay. Well, the only other thing I'm curious about then is kind of, what's next. So we talked about it. We've got 12 to 15 months of releases that are there, that are
Mhm.
licensed, ready to come out. So that's good news. Do you see yourself ramping up production ever? Like, do you see the label growing in a particular direction or size, or are you just
Uh,
kind of one at a time?
I think it's still for the most part. I don't really see it changing a lot from where it is right now, which is essentially like a one a release, one a month release
Hmm.
kind of schedule. But I mean, I don't hold me to it. Um, we'll see when I talk to you again in 18 months or something.
When you're putting out three a month. Um, okay, well, I just have to say this, like, I think it's come out implicitly, but explicitly, you're doing a fantastic job. The curation is top notch. I would recommend any movie in the catalog. And maybe with the commentary, I'd recommend Bilitis. But outside but
I
outside of
no offense taken over here, but
cool.
so
Um,
you're not you didn't it weren't like attacking like like a Jeremy or something,
oh yeah, awesome.
which
Okay.
is closer to my heart.
Awesome. Okay. Well, no, no, I wouldn't do that. Um, it's I think your curation game is on point. Uh, I don't think you have any misses. I think that um, there's excitement around the label to where people are saying like some of the different I'm invited to a YouTube channel every now and again, and we talk about labels that
Oh,
we would have to buy. Like, there's this thing of like with 22 partner labels, what are the three that you would choose?
oh
And in the
wow.
comments, people are listing it, and Fun City is always one of the three. So
Oh, I'm really
um,
flattered. Thank you. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I take
well,
that
thank you.
seriously. So thank you
Keep,
for letting me know.
of course, yeah. I'll forward you the link so you can see it in real time. But everyone's putting in obviously Fun City. Here's two other ones. But
Wow.
um, please keep doing it. I know we'll all keep buying. And yeah, thank you so much for making some time for this today.
Thank you, Chris. Really a lot of fun. And like I said, I wasn't kidding. 18 months from now or whatever,
We'll do it.
yeah, we'll do it again.
We'll do it. Awesome. Okay, thanks, Jonathan.
All right. Take care, man.